Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna have a look at the current best season 23 Necro build, Masquerade of the Burning Carnival. Oh boy. This is more of a basic guide on how to get you to your first Greater Rift 70 and above on the Necro class. I'll be giving you the items, the abilities, the cube passives, and a bit of background as to how this build is meant to be played. I've been playing around with this build for a little while now, and honestly, it is pretty powerful, and compared to the other builds I've tried, it's quite clear that it is the strongest choice at the moment. Anyway, here's the vid, and as always, I hope you enjoy, guys.
The shadows will take you.
To start us off, let's look at the items you will be looking for while gearing up after leveling or if you're transitioning from another build. So firstly, you'll be looking to have the Masquerade set, which is the baseline of this build, to be honest. What this set does is when you have two pieces, it makes your simulacrums take no damage and activate all of the available runes, as well as refreshing simulacrum's cooldown if you were to die. When you have four pieces, it makes your damage reduced by 50%, which does not include your simulacrum's damage, which really are the main source of damage in this build. But it also makes your damage taken split with your simulacrums, which, as I mentioned before, are immune to damage. So this negates a lot of damage and just overall is a great tool for survivability when it comes to this build. When you have 6 pieces, it increases your bone spear damage by 10,000%. Yes, you heard me, 10,000%. And your simulacrum's bone spear by 3 times that effect. That's right, that's a lot of damage. Making your simulacrums hit like actual trucks, while your own cast is more of an activator itself. With the set bonus out of the way, let's have a look at the other key choices in this season when it comes to your gear. Firstly, you'll want Haunted Vision in your neck piece, as it will make your simulacrum last forever, and also make them copy Grim Scythe, which is going to be a essence generator in this build. Next up, we have Dainty's Bindings. Sorry if I pronounce some of these wrong, because some of these names, man, pretty bad. But anyway, Dainty's Binding in a belt slot, a popular option because it reduces all damage taken by an additional 45% if a target currently has one of your curses. A great addition to our survivability and overall a solid choice. Up next, let's look at our ring slots, starting with Crispin's Sentence. Generally, nothing new to the Necromancer, as Crispin has always been a powerful ring to us. It increases the damage you deal to a target if it is slowed by 100%, or triple that if it is stunned, making this a great use of our ring slot, and overall making our damage more constant. On the second ring slot, we have Convention of Elements, a famous ring as well that will increase the damage of either cold, poison, or physical, for necromancers at least, by 200%. It rotates between the three elements every 4 seconds. Generally, with this build, we're only interested by the poison increase, as it will increase the damage of our bone spear by an additional 200%, which is most of our damage really. So try to play around that if you can, but otherwise don't worry too much about it, as it's not that important unless you're doing really high level of greater keystones. When it comes to our weapon slot, and you will be looking to use Scythe of the Cycle, as it increases the damage of our secondary skill. In this case, Bone Spear once again. The bonus damage on Bone Spear is 400%, while your Bone Armor is active. It also reduces the duration of Bone Armor, but it's generally not really a problem, as you will be using Bone Armor on CD as long as you have a mob close to you. Alright, next on the offhand slot. There's no specific or better offhand out there. You're just looking for the best stats, which generally are intellect, crit chance, AoE chance, and bone spear damage by 15%. Now with the fundamental items out of the way, let's look at cube slots. Firstly, you will want to grind bounties in Act 1, as you need to get the Ring of Royal Grandeur, which decreases the amount of items required to have a set bonus by 1 item, allowing you to use Orgil's power for shoulders, which you can craft by the way, instead of the Masquerade shoulders, and the rest of the same set Orgil's Search, allowing you to get the full Orgil's bonus, decreasing your damage taken by 15% with the 2 set bonus, and then decreasing it by an extra 30% if you're fighting against elites. Also increasing your damage by 30% in general, as well as increasing it again by 30% against elite, which is a huge set, especially when you're doing solo Greater Rifts. For the rest of the cube, you'll be using Maltoria's Petrified Spike as your weapon slot, as it increases your Bone Spear damage, once again, by 700%. And on the last slot, the armor slot, you'll be using Gelfimdor's Marrow-Guards. Sorry, it's the name. But anyway, it also increases the amount of damage your Bone Spear does via your Simulacrum, increasing it by an extra 400%, which is huge. That's it with the armor, but there are some other variants of this that you could check out, but generally this is the best I've found and used myself so far, so bear that in mind. Let's talk skills next. With the armor out of the way, it will make some of the choices here more logical when I linked with the armor I've mentioned before. Firstly, as your primary skill and essence generator, we have Grim Scythe with the rune Frost Scythe, giving you a nice attack speed increase all the while generating essence. Not only that, but with this build, your Simulacrum will also use Grim Scythe with the aid of the neck piece you'll be using, Haunted Visions, which I mentioned before, giving you more value. As your secondary skill, it won't be surprising for us to be using Bone Spear, as everything in this build resolves around that disability. And Simulacrum, of course. Rune wise, you'll be using Blighted Marrow, which increases the Bone Spear's damage depending on how many enemies it goes through. In Greater Rifts, it tends to go through quite a few enemies, making your Bone Spear just do that much more damage when it reaches the last one. Next up, we have Simulacrum with the Reservoir Rune, which honestly does not particularly matter due to the set bonus of Masquerade making every single rune active. You always want your Simulacrums out, as they are not only your main source of damage, but also reduce the damage you take dramatically. Next up, we have Decrepify as your curse, as it will act as a slow and give you Dainty's bonus, which reduces your damage taken by 45%. Rune-wise, you will run Borrowed Time if in general, but if you do go into much higher Greater Rifts, then Wither is a very viable choice for the higher damage reduction on the cursed enemies. Next skill will be Blood Rush with the rune Potency. Not much to say, it's a teleport, and it also increases your armor after the teleport for a bit of time. A great way to escape imprison and such effects, or just to move faster and overall just go faster through your GR. Last but not least, we have Bone Armor with the Harvest of Anguish rune. For the extra mobility, now having your armor up from this ability will increase both your tankiness and damage dealing due to the weapon you're using. Now, having mentioned all of this, we have passives to talk about. Starting with Spreading Malediction, which increases your damage dealt based on how many enemies are cursed by you. 1% per curse, a great damage boost if you keep your curse up on as many targets as you can. Next up, we have Stand Alone, an extra defensive passive that will increase your tankiness further, as this build does not have many pets aside for the 2 Simulacrums you have running with you. Next up, we have Bone Prison, which give your Bone Spear a 30% chance to stun an enemy, which goes perfectly with Crispin's Sentence Ring we are using, as it increases your damage dealt to stun enemies by 300%, making your Bone Spear really powerful. Lastly, I tend to run Final Service as the additional immunity and cheat death effect is always welcome, but if you feel very comfortable with the build, there are some other great passives out there. Having given you the skills, there is one last aspect that you will need to complete this build. That being gems and legendary gems. That's right, here comes the grind. Let's start with the normal gems first, as you will unlock these much sooner than you will the legendary gems just yet. With this build, you will want to use Flawless Royal Topaz or anything of the Topaz family if you do not have the best variant yet on your chest piece and pants. This will give you a nice amount of intellect and a bit of increase on damage because of it. When it comes to your helmet, you will want to use Flawless Royal Diamond or Flawless Royal Amethyst. To be honest, most people tend to use the Diamond variant, but I felt like Amethyst did need a mention as it can be useful if you feel you are struggling to survive, especially if you're doing really high levels of Greater Rift, as it gives you a nice buff in health percentage. But if you're unsure, just go with Diamond on the helmet, as overall it is the best out of the two and the most commonly used. Its effect is to reduce your skill cooldown, which is great for both your teleport and bone armor. Lastly, you will want to use a Flawless Royal Emerald Gem, or something of the Emerald family on your weapon. It increases your critical hit damage percentage, which overall is the best when it comes to weapon slot. Having finished with the normal gems, let's move to the legendary gems themselves. The first gem you want with this build is Bane of the Trapped, which increases the damage you do to crowd control enemies, depending on the rank of the gem. It also gets an effect that slows all enemies by 30% when they are within 15 yards. This goes hand to hand with the Ring Crispin sentence and makes this gem very valuable to this build. This effect is unlocked at rank 25 of this gem. The second legendary gem you'll want is Zay's Stone of Vengeance, which increases the damage you deal depending on how far away an enemy is. The further away it is, the more damage you do, making your damage to the back of the pack really strong and insane. As the Bone Marrow rune also increases damage per mob the spear goes through. At rank 25, it will also give your attacks a 20% chance to stun for 1 second, which is once again perfect with Crispin's sentence and increases your overall damage every time an enemy is stunned. The last legendary gem on this list will be Bane of the Stricken. Now, here I have seen some different gems being used, but personally this is the one I have had the most success with. It increases the damage an enemy takes every time you hit it based on the gem's rank. At rank 25, it also gives you a 25% damage buff against both the Rift bosses and the Guardian at the end. Just overall a well-rounded gem that makes tougher opponents easier to handle. Now with skills, gems, legendary gems and the gear out of the way, I just want to give you guys a short priority list while playing this build. To start us off, after entering a Greater Rift or any type of content, the first thing you will want to do is use Simulacrum. Always have it active, it is your biggest priority. It also resets if you die, so there's no reason why it should not be active. Another thing to keep in mind with this build is to keep your bone armor up. Upon entering the rift on the first pack, you want to start getting stacks, as it will increase your damage dramatically and also make you more tanky. Having just mentioned the passives, keeping your curse on as many targets as possible is a great habit to get into, as it will yield better results as well as better overall damage. A last note, if you want to min-max your gameplay with this build, you want to spam Bone Spear when your ring convention of elements is on poison, as a majority of your damage is poison based. Anyway, I think it's time to wrap up the video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, sub and hit that bell button, as it would really help out the channel grow. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. See you around, gamers.